Hey guys, and welcome to Roulette Reviews, the series where we spin our wheel of genres to then spin our wheel of movies to find two films to watch and review. So let's see what we get this time. Okay, we have our genre wheel here, so let's give it a spin. And I'm honestly hoping for maybe sci-fi or something. Oh, fantasy. I was just about to say fantasy, so sci-fi or fantasy, I'm happy with this. Okay, so here's our fantasy wheel. Let's spin this and see what we get. I have no clue what I really want to watch off of here. So we have Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Okay. So Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a 2023 film adapted from the board game Dungeons & Dragons, and this is one I'm of course familiar with. I own this one and it landed at 61 on my 2023 ranked list, narrowly missing the top 50 video I made. I did, however, make a video about this movie when it first came out, so go and watch that if you're interested in my extended thoughts on the film, but here's my quick review after this rewatch. So from the very first scene and the intro sequences as a whole, you see exactly the vibes of this film and what we're to expect for the rest of the runtime. We get some great costuming and makeup, a cozy and beautiful group of practical sets. Chris Pine as Edgin is charmingly hilarious. Michelle Rodriguez is the classic hard ass with a softness to her. We see the rest of the characters who are pretty one note, but I'll get to why that works later, and we even get a ton of exposition masked as our protagonist stalling for time using his wit. It's amazing how efficient this opening is. We get character motivations, the tone of the film, our characters established, aesthetics formed and visual language created, and we even get to set up our antagonist. All this whilst remaining grossly entertained and giving us some of the best line deliveries of the year whilst paying off a joke you didn't even know was happening.
Approved your pardon!
It also really sets the tone of a Dungeons & Dragons game. Every character is a classic outline of a personality, being simple enough without being devoid of, well, character. And it uses these very simple characters to fuel a story full of adventure and navigate a world completely unknown to us but still feels somewhat familiar. It uses so many classic fantasy tropes and ideas that though the world is vast and feels undiscovered, we don't ever feel lost or without context. Also, Dungeons & Dragons is a very tongue-in-cheek game, so the film can afford to be a bit cheesy and rough around the edges because it just works to its advantage of being an adaptation of this game. So if a character isn't that well written at times, or concepts seem a bit far-fetched, or a line is delivered a bit crudely, it just simply gets away with it because it has this insane cheat code of being in character and in spirit of D&D. Though this didn't rank necessarily high on my 2023 ranked, I have found a lot of comfort in this film, and I'm quite upset that this film flopped. It has some scintillating action sequences juxtaposed with comedy in a perfect blend. Justice Smith proves to us once again how versatile he is, and of course everyone is doing a great job generally, especially Chris Pine, but a standout I don't hear as much conversation about is Hugh Grant, who is playing the perfect shit-eating grin villain. He's so goofy and comic booky. The whole thing is paced exceptionally well, and though the runtime runs for over 2 hours, which is more than your average family adventure movie, it absolutely breezes by because it is constantly moving, showing you new things, introducing new side characters or items or places, whilst every scene progresses Edgin's arc, so nothing is without purpose. Honestly, when I first watched this and the second time, I vastly underestimated how economical this script is. It has a vivacity that's entirely mesmeric, and though it seems to at times perambulate a little around and indulge in its own creations, it's all engaging and adds layers that feel like they matter. So in the end, if I'm going to add this to the Roulette Review tier list, I think I've got to drop it in A. It's a massively underrated family fantasy adventure movie that isn't attempting a lot but masterfully pulls off what it does attempt. Right, so here we are, back at the genre wheel. Let's give it another spin. Like I said, I wanted something sci-fi, but I'm okay with something else. And oh, we get sci-fi! Okay, a science fiction movie. Let's go. Okay, so here we are at the science fiction wheel. Let's see what we get. We have a lot of movies on this one, so we're gonna have A Scanner Darkly. Now I'm actually quite glad I've spun this one, because though it doesn't appear to be the classic or typical sci-fi I was hoping for this video, it is a film by Richard Linklater, who I've recently took a particular interest in, given me just seeing Hitman and enjoying it quite a bit, and also upon realising that he's a director that I really enjoy, though I don't think about him at all really that often. His Before trilogy is a perfect trilogy, every film being a 10 for me, and his other works like School of Rock or Bernie massively work for me, and even Last Flag Flying is enjoyable. He seems like a director that varies what he makes a lot due to just an addiction to keeping busy, which I can admire. Which brings us to A Scanner Darkly, one I've meant to get around to for a long time but never managed to until now. It's an animated film that's styled in a way that you've likely never really experienced before, especially to this extent. It's a 2D animation that's made entirely of rotoscope footage, so it looks incredibly unique and borderline uncanny. It's something like the Telltale games, but they're closer to shell-shaded than anything. But due to this bold, creative decision, the film can really unsettle some people or just not work stylistically for them at all. But for me, it works absolutely. I love a bold visual decision, even ones I don't particularly like. I just appreciate the gamble, and in this case, the gamble pays off for me. I think the sort of unsettling motion of the animation works towards the vibe of the film, which is meant to be unsettling and uncomfortable. There's also so much vibrance in every scene that plays by the rules of reality, but also gets some creative liberties in terms of palettes. There's also a lot of these gorgeous purples and blues that give everything a very melancholic look and feel when they're around, but the animation also allows the actors' performances to be more on display than typical animation, which is of course dependent on character design. And speaking of the actors, the cast of this is limited but filled with heavy hitters in Keanu Reeves, Robert Downey Jr., Woody Harrelson, Winona Ryder, and to a lesser extent Rory Cochrane, who, though is probably the lesser known in the cast, gives my favourite performance. I do have to say though, I'm of the opinion that Keanu Reeves is not a particularly great actor. He is completely serviceable in certain roles, especially less taxing ones that are mostly physical like John Wick, but when it comes to character acting, he suffers quite a lot, especially when next to more proficient performers. But in this, he gives just the right amount of reservation and intrigue and depressed and curious. It's definitely one of his better performances, and being honest, Woody Harrelson, who's probably my favourite actor of the bunch, is given my least favourite performance. He can get quite grating at times, and that does hold back a lot of scenes for me. Overall, it's a very interesting take on this kind of story, and a commendable experiment from Linklater that shows a lot of ambition, and though I don't think it all entirely pays off, I think it works well enough to warrant the niche fanbase it has. It's based on the novel of the same title, which I haven't read, but I imagine leans more heavily into the sci-fi dystopian aspects. This film could quite easily be set in almost any time period post 1990, and it would work, and I guess this sort of timeless setting works towards this film's endless relevance since its commentary is always going to be contemporary, but I do wish it did reach further into the sci-fi elements beyond the form-shifting technology and the weird cosmic hallucinations that read out Freck's sins. It's in some ways like Requiem for a Dream, but without the harrowing self-reflection and the incessant need to suck all joy from your personal universe, which makes it less effective as an anti-drug campaign but an easier watch overall. So I'm going to slot this one right alongside Millennium Actress in the B tier, which has only just made me realise that twice now we've had a live action film and an animated film paired. I'm just really counting on getting an S tier soon and dreading getting anything below a B. But that's just me. Have you seen either of these movies? If so, let me know what you think of them. If not, will you? And whether it's a fantasy adventure based on a board game or a sci-fi thriller based on a novel or not, as always, keep watching movies.